Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, dig deep. Other than a faint glow coming from one of the back rooms, the town's charity shop was in darkness, its front door firmly closed. Although it had opened in 1985, the building had been used commercially since the 1800s, when it had variously been a pharmacy, a bank, and a tavern. The shop was close to the river in Marpleton, a pleasant English market town which had once been home to a nearby priory. In ancient times, monks had wandered back and forth to sell their wares at a market which still existed in diminished form across the road. Regulars were now peering through the shop window, but the main lights stayed off. A few of the shop's helpers were huddled in the back room. Patrick, the treasurer, had collected the spare keys from the greengrocer to let them in. The gatherers were addressing one topic, namely, why their long-serving manager, Rhea, had failed to open up the day before. "I just can't understand it," Ivy, one of the shop's founding members, said. "I've never known her not to turn up, unless she's on holiday. In all the years I've known Rhea, she's never had a day's sickness." "Wasn't she going to New Zealand to visit her sister?" Patrick asked. "She was, but not until the following week. It's in the shop diary. Here, take a look." Ivy tapped the relevant pages meaningfully. "I'm not doubting you, Ivy, but she may have got the dates wrong. She wasn't in the habit of making mistakes." Ivy's loyalty knew no bounds. Patrick adopted a different approach. "You've tried Rhea's landline, I take it?" "Several times. Each time it went straight to answer phone." "Right. Still, I expect we're worrying over nothing. But you have to admit she has been a bit distracted lately," someone piped up. Patrick turned to Silvana hopefully, but she shook her head. "I've tried her on her mobile, but nothing." Silvana was a refugee who had joined the shop 2 years earlier. Since Rhea had taken her under her wing when she first came to England, her English had improved markedly. Silvana had been on the verge of admitting her true feelings for Rhea. Reality had crushed the likelihood of her returning to her homeland anytime soon and been replaced by something entirely unexpected. An overwhelming love for another human being. Silvana's great wish was to know whether that love was returned. Rhea clearly liked her, but was it worth risking their friendship for more? The path to such an admission seemed littered with obstacles. Now, the mystery of Rhea's whereabouts could be added to an already growing list. "Did Rhea say anything about changing her holiday plans, Silvana?" Patrick asked, determined to get to the bottom of things. "Number I went to her house for my lesson last Wednesday. She told me she'd be away all next week." Silvana had considered the matter carefully. "Yes, that is so." Patrick said. "I guess I'll have to contact the area manager about reopening the shop." "You'll need to do that. Volunteer phone numbers are stored in the locked cabinet, and only Rhea has the key," Ivy interjected. "Head office have contact numbers too." Everyone knew Rhea always carried a set of keys on a fob attached to a waistband. Patrick joked she secretly had a cellar key for the shop's more trying customers, to which he'd received an enigmatic smile. The actual cellar key had supposedly vanished in the mists of time. Certainly, there was no call to use the cellar with ample storage space elsewhere. In any case, the cellar door was kept permanently locked, preventing anyone getting trapped if there was a fire. Patrick scrutinized the rota sheets. Maybe Judd would be willing to help if we reopen the shop, he suggested. Silvana, who distrusted Judd, said nothing. 3 months earlier, dressed in black jeans and hoodie and trailed by a mournful cocker spaniel, Judd had shown up to inquire about volunteering. When Silvana had bent to pat his dog, it had backed off whimpering. She gets nervous round new people, Judd had explained. Tucking away the banking money, Patrick had gone to fetch Rhea. A young man's inquiring about volunteering, he told her. Shall I send him through? What's he like? Rhea was wearily tapping information into the computer at her desk. He seems pleasant enough. His dog's rather nervous. Rhea massaged her aching neck. Send him through, she said. Rhea had confided in Silvana about her difficulty in getting references for Judd Dig Deep. Eventually, he presented her with 2 typed ones, supposedly from an ex-employer. With typical thoroughness, Rhea had rung one of the numbers to learn more about the new helper. When a voice answered sounding suspiciously like Judd's, she'd intended to investigate further. However, other things had intervened. A few weeks after this uncharacteristic omission, Judd was indeed proving to be an asset. Willing to turn his hand to anything, it was a relief not having to lift heavy sacks and boxes donated by the public from one end of the shop to the other. With little guidance, Judd had transformed one of the sorting rooms, leaving it immaculate. One evening, when Silvana cycled past the back of the shop, she noticed a group of undesirables hanging with Judd, engrossed in conversation. She hurried past, hoping she hadn't been seen. She raised her concerns to Rhea, who told her it was nothing to worry about, that she'd keep an eye on things, and bafflingly added, I'd rather you didn't mention this to anyone else. The day the shop reopened, without Rhea at the helm, was Silvana's birthday. Patrick invited her to join him later for one of his wife's specials, homemade pizza and pear wine. The food tasted delicious, but she pushed her plate to one side. You're still worried about Rhea, aren't you? Patrick observed. Her cell phone is dead. It's strange. I knocked on her door last night, but still no answer. Patrick got up. I tell you what, I happen to know Rhea's neighbor, Angela, from the book club. She looks after the garden when Rhea goes away. She may well have a spare key. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, but it wouldn't do any harm to check if everything is all right. Silvana was relieved. That's a great idea. Thanks, Patrick. I've been known to have a few in my time. Come on, get your coat. Let's see if we can solve this mystery. Half an hour later, the pair were standing in Rhea's house. The hallway led into an open-plan kitchen diner with gleaming countertops and state-of-the-art gadgets. The smell of coffee lingered invitingly. When Rhea's partner Lindsay had died 5 years earlier, she'd left her with a generous insurance payout. Silvana sighed, remembering the other day when she and Rhea had drawn close over a bottle of wine. Rhea had even given her a present. Only to be opened on your birthday, she instructed. But beneath the gaiety, she'd been out of sorts. Rhea had brushed aside Silvana's offer of help with a brisk, I'm fine. I'll check down here if you do upstairs, Patrick said, jolting Silvana back to the present. The passport was lying on the bedside table. However, the photograph bore little resemblance to the person Silvana had come to love and admire. Having spent time working for a private detective agency when she was younger, instinct overrode caution, and she began a meticulous search for clues. Predictably, Rhea's shop keys were lying on the bedside table. More unexpected was the discovery of another set of keys attached to a ring with a tag labeled Cellar. Are you all right? Patrick called up from the bottom of the staircase. I'm okay. Silvana tucked the cellar keys into her bag. Then she remembered Ria's present and opened it. She was surprised to find a pay-as-you-go phone already charged up. "Well?" Patrick exclaimed. "Did you find anything?" "Just this." She gave him the passport. "That's odd. It appears she never made it to New Zealand after all. Maybe it's time to involve the police." "What? Right now?" "It is rather late. I doubt they'll want to be disturbed tonight." Patrick thought of the half-opened bottle of wine waiting back home. "I'll act tomorrow morning. Shall I walk you back?" "No need. I can take care of myself," Silvana said firmly. The moon was her only companion as Silvana descended the cellar steps at the back of the shop. With growing unease, she encased her hands in a pair of gloves and took off her shoes. She didn't want anyone to know of her presence. After 3 attempts, the door creaked open, and she was met by a cloying damp, overlaid by something else. Something unpleasant. Tensing, she flicked on her phone torch and spotted a narrow corridor with another door at the end. Filled with foreboding, she slowly turned the handle. She smelled the body before she saw it. Wearing the trademark hoodie, it, the bloating, discolored thing in front of her, could hardly be called human. Judd lay slumped against an upturned table, his eyes staring and opaque. Silvana covered her face with a handkerchief to prevent retching and inspected the scene, noting the bloodied head and smashed vase lying beside it. The blood had pooled and dried, staining the clothes and floor. She was no expert, but if the rotting undertones were anything to go by, death had probably occurred a few days earlier. Even then, horror was blunted by relief. So long as it wasn't Ria, she had the strength for anything. But where was Ria? Adjusting to the dimness, Silvana tried to make sense of her surroundings. Some crudely constructed shelves filled with storage tubs and packets lay stacked against one of the walls. The place was obviously some kind of drugs den. Could Judd's death have been the result of a disagreement with other gang members? Silvana's stomach lurched. What if they turned up and found her? She'd only just locked the cellar door and picked up her shoes when she heard voices on the driveway. Somehow, she managed to scramble behind one of the bins underneath the fire escape. Hardly daring to breathe, she waited until the scuffling feet passed and the gang disappeared down the cellar steps. Then, she bolted into the night as fast as her trembling legs would carry her. She would decide what to do when she got home. Halfway across the town's park, muffled ringtones came from her back. "Silvana?" The voice was clear as day at the other end of the line. "Ria, is it really you? Thank God. Are you all right? Where are you calling from? Talk to me." "If I tell you, you must keep it to yourself," Ria said urgently. "Of course. By the way, I have your keys." "The shop keys?" "The cellar keys. Long story. I have just been down there. I found him, Judd, dead. It was horrible." Silvana began to laugh hysterically as the shock kicked in. "You went into the cellar?" Ria repeated. "Why?" "I needed to know if you were all right. I was so afraid I was going to find you, not him. When I saw your passport, I knew you couldn't have gone abroad. But something must have happened. I didn't get the chance." "What happened?" "I will tell you, but not now. Not on the phone." "Patrick is planning to go to the police tomorrow about your passport," Ria asked. "Did you touch anything when you went into the cellar? Did you touch him?" "No." Silvana's teeth were chattering from shock. "It's cold outside. I was wearing gloves. But what do you know about Judd?" "Why were you wearing gloves?" "I don't know. I had a bad feeling. I didn't want to be implicated in anything. Back home, I once worked at a detective agency. I learnt about not touching crime scenes. You may want to call the police, Rhea said. But please, can I ask you not to tell them I got in contact or about me giving you the phone? We'll meet soon. That is, if you want to. I'll understand if you don't want anything more to do with me. Of course I want to meet you. It seemed silly pretending now. It's all I think about. Silvana's heart flipped when she saw the distant figure standing on the pier below. The matinee performance at the Pavilion Theater was in full swing, and the pier was almost deserted. She came up behind Rhea, patting her on the shoulder. "Hey!" Rhea turned, instantly relaxing when she saw her friend. "Hey!" Silvana sank into Rhea's arms. For a long time, the pair embraced. "It's so good to see you," Silvana said. "Likewise." Rhea glanced round. "Does anyone know you're here?" "Number, and I'm so hungry." Rhea grinned. "How about some fish and chips? I'll treat you." "You mean the famous English fish and chips?" Rhea grinned. "I've discovered a great place on the front." She linked arms with Silvana. "Come on, let's eat. Then I'll tell you everything." Judd was a bad lot, Rhea admitted later. "He was running a drug racket, and I threatened to report him to the police." "It doesn't surprise me. But how did you find out?" "Not long after I joined the shop, I was clearing up one of the back rooms and came across a discarded cabinet. There were 2 sets of cellar keys in it. I never told anyone about them, partly because I didn't want a lot of fuss. I wanted to keep it to myself. Unfortunately, Judd caught me coming up the stairs one evening and demanded to store his things there. I didn't like the way he spoke to me. When I refused, he threatened to torture his dog in front of me. He implied if I didn't comply, I'd be next. His eyes were so cold. For the second time in my life, I felt real fear. There would be time enough to ask about the first time, Silvana thought, clasping Rhea's hand. "I'm afraid there's more," Rhea said dully. "You probably won't want anything to do with me when you hear the rest." Silvana clutched Rhea's hand more tightly. She'd come too far to be brushed aside. "Why don't you let me be the judge of that?" she said firmly. "Whatever it is, we'll bear it together. You see, I love you. I need you to know that." "You do?" For a moment, Rhea's face shone. "That's a relief," she said, laughing. "I thought it was just me." "Did you?" Silvana laughed too. "I may have had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything." "Oh, I'm so happy," Silvana said. "But hold your horses before we get carried away," Rhea warned. "Hold my horses?" An English expression. It means don't count your chickens. "Count my chickens?" "Silvana, my love, let me finish my story before you say anything." "Okay, sorry." Silvana nibbled a stray chip. Rhea was smiling in spite of everything. "In the end, I couldn't stand being held to ransom by a bully like Judd. A few days ago, I foolishly decided to confront him in the cellar. He went to grab a knife from the table. There was an old jar on one of the shelves, and as he turned, I smashed it over his head." She shuddered. "I couldn't tell you all this, but I made sure you had the phone before I left. I hoped you'd stay in touch. The day after, I headed here, not wanting to be traced. I paid for everything with cash." "But surely the police will realize you only acted in self-defense," Silvana insisted. "Perhaps I should have gone to them straight away, but I couldn't face it." Rhea's hesitation was palpable, especially considering what? In spite of the warmth between them, Silvana felt a sudden chill, like someone walking over a grave. What aren't you telling me? Ria's voice broke. I'm terminally ill. At best, I only have months to live. At worst, it will be weeks. I have all the medication I need. I just want to spend my last days in a place with happy memories. I can't believe it. But Silvana knew Ria was speaking the truth. She tried to disguise her anguish. How long have you known? She whispered. I only found out for certain the day before Judd threatened me in the cellar. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. I should have told the police everything long before, but by then I was in too deep. I'm going to stay with you. Silvana had never been more certain of anything. Ria shook her head. Stay with me tonight and go back tomorrow. It won't be long before the police check the cellar. It will look odd if you're not there. I have every faith in your survival skills. Look how far you've come. In the meantime, there's something I want you to have. What is it? Ria handed Silvana 2 envelopes. Inside one is a plan of the cellar. After years of searching, I think I may have finally uncovered the sealed entrance to a tunnel leading to the old priory. My father was a historian and suspected there might be one near the shop. The other is a copy of my will. It's my final and dearest wish to make your life better when I've gone, life and death. It took him 10 seconds to die. There's a lot he could have thought of in those 10 seconds. Likely among them was how he didn't want to die. There's a fear of the unknown in the heart of every human. An awareness that one day the end will come, that you won't have any control over it. Cultures around the world have stories of what will happen in death. Will you arrive at the pearly gates? Do you need payment for the ferryman to bring you to the afterlife? Or will you find yourself born again and again until you achieve enlightenment, regardless of what he believed in life? In the final moments, did it bring him comfort? Did it bring him peace? Or did he think of the past? Living by the lake, first fearing its depth as a tadpole before emerging as a conqueror. Reliving the carefree moments of youth, of the rocks and sand between toes, and the sap from climbing trees. Growing up with first 2 parents, then only one. Knowing the sorrow that it can bring to one so young. Long nights at the bonfire, first with families, then with friends. The first look, the fire-glow skin, and the reflective eyes. With her came quick smiles, soft hands, and first times. The boy becoming a man as nights lengthened and the sky darkened. She left with the autumn breeze, and he left that lake too. He woke early and trained and marched. He climbed 4-meter walls, crossed ditches, spent hours at the firing range, and completed field exercises in combat gear. Discipline and mental fortitude brought on new meaning. And then they weren't exercises anymore. He would not have lingered on his military tours, but he would have seen faces of his comrades, dead and alive. With those that couldn't be saved, there'd be the guilt, the sadness, the regret. With those who survived, he'd always have a bond. His superiors who directed troops across the land. Civilians he had helped, who he hoped were doing as well as they could in a war-ravaged country. Together, they had molded him into a man with iron will and direction, rough around the edges, with kindness deep within his heart. It was a life that he'd relived in nightmares. When he left the military, he came back to the lake. Its calmness was a balm for his soul. Watching over it, and the people who surrounded it, calmed his mind and steadied his heart. His work was now to protect and serve the people, to wear a different uniform. He was wearing that uniform as he died. Would he be thinking of his family? He'd never been much of a cook, and he spent many nights at the Main Street diner. She too had come back to the lake, escaping the corporate ladder for the hustle and bustle of the small town, taking over the diner from the previous owners. They sat at the same table, night after night, week after week, month after month. She was a strong woman, able to stand on her own 2 feet, and with him as an equal. They'd chosen to walk their paths together, 2 homes and hearts becoming one. She'd know that this was a possibility with his work, and had never failed to say goodbye as he left. Would he take solace in this, knowing that she'd feel sorrow, grief, and pain, but that she'd be able to continue without him? Or would he worry the most about the pain in a tinier heart, to a soul that was just beginning to blossom? Ariel was 9 years old, his little girl who he had spent countless hours as a baby just counting 10 fingers and 10 toes. He taught her to ride a bike and throw a ball. They'd planned a camping trip for the summer. What would she think of his never coming back? Would she understand that it was his duty? Would she resent it and him? Would she remember all the times they'd shared? Would he be able to think at all? Would the pain override his thoughts in his last moments? Would his world focus only on that and the sounds that echoed around him? From the initial sound of the gunshot to the impact, the pain in his abdomen, and the retaliatory shot from his partner that took down the killer. They had been called for attempted shoplifting at a gas station near the highway. The cashier had caught him, and one of the customers became concerned when the situation had begun to escalate and called the police. They hadn't known about the gun. They hadn't known that the man had gone off his medications. What he did see was that there was a young boy in the store as well, no more than 12. Felix had gone in to get snacks, while his dad filled the truck with gas. It was at him that the gun had been pointed in that moment. It was Felix that was saved when he died. Was it Felix that he thought of? The young boy he'd sacrificed his life to save. How would he spend his second chance at life? Would he go to the funeral and see the little girl crying in a black dress? Would he see her around school as his eyes closed for the last time? Would he see into the future? Felix becoming Ariel's self-appointed big brother and guardian, forever tied together by tragedy. Growing up together at the lake, him pushing her when required and comforting her when needed. Her ensuring that he focused on schoolwork as much as sports. Her scared and angry when he told her he was going to the police academy. That he wanted to help others like her father, who had saved him. Through times of luck and difficulty, Ariel and Felix lived them together. And one day, down by the lake where they had grown up, where her father grew up, Ariel would walk down the aisle to him with her mother by her side. Ariel and Felix would live a long life together at the lake with their family. It wasn't always easy, with fights and sadness, but they came through. When their son was born, they named him Liam, after his grandfather, and sometimes they'd sit on the porch as dusk settled around them, holding hands, thinking about the man who'd given them both so much. Though he would miss all of those moments, the foresight and knowledge that they would be okay, that they'd live a life full of happiness and love. Would that give him true peace? For in those 10 seconds Liam lived. Countdown to death. I stared at the wall with half-lidded eyes and gulped. My breath was hoarse and croaky, my throat dry and absent of hydration. My hands trembled uncontrollably, scrambling for the cheap chalk, even though my eyes never once graced the sight of the white stick. My exhales were never rhythmic, constantly choking on the air as I mentally tried to inhale and exhale at the same time. I looked at every line drawn individually, memorizing what each meant to every detail of the messy scratch. There drawn were tallies, 42 singular ones, 8 full ones, with 2 to spare, to be exact. Each resembled each day I was kept here, in this hell. And they were slowly counting down to the inevitable release. I had 3 more weeks to fully understand my limited time here. My eyes suddenly widened as I let out a scream of terror. A scream that my fellow prisoners were very accustomed to. A scene of trauma washed over my eyes and sent my body crashing down onto the floor in pure fear. A sense of panic overwhelmed me, and my body began to sweat. All my movements henceforth were uncontrollable and predicted by the past. My emotions were painfully drowned by regretful memories that I begged to forget. I could only watch as my gravest mistake haunted me once again. "Paulette!" a gruff voice called, alerting me and distracting me from my duties. Paulette Ann Hadley. That's me. Short blue hair and matching piercing eyes. I'd dream about how they held the essence of the pure sky. But those thoughts were the only fantasies that I used to distract me from the life that I dreaded so much. Then again, I was very far from pure, even before the incident. "Paulette!" they shouted again after only a few seconds of waiting. Impatient as always, incompetent as always, the voice belonged to my master, the Earl of Daventry, Sir Peter Holmes, a sorrowful old man who spent his seemingly endless days laying in his bed or sat in his office, scoffing his face with the fatty meals the chefs were forced to cook to fulfill his never-ending stomach. He ate his feelings. I'd feel sorry for him if he weren't such a bastard. "Paulette!" he screeched for the third time, all in the span of 20 seconds, so loud that I saw the family of mice that lived in the corner of the laundry room scurry across the dusty cobblestone floors in fright. I rolled my eyes in frustration and slapped the grungy old rag I used to clean the counter into the rusty steel sink. I tightened my apron and smoothed out the traditional maid's dress, all while cursing to myself in irritation. My uniform was nothing out of the ordinary for a low-classed maid like myself. Black and white, all the way through, of course. A short black dress with a white apron, white stockings, and black buckled shoes. I hurried up the grand staircase of the large Daventry estate, my feet thanking me for gifting them of a different surface to stand on that wasn't rough, uneven stone. Luscious carpet was certainly a lovely change from grubby concrete. Reaching my master's doors was something I was always dreaded because of what lay on the other side. I pressed a hand against the shiny wood, recently dusted and glossed by yours truly. The smooth touch of the spruce was nice against my sore and worn fingertips. "Master," I greeted with a sickly sweet tone, a forced smile painting my features. I could almost feel my left eye twitch in pent-up hatred. "Paulette!" he roared, his voice deep and gravelly. He was laid down on his satin sheets that held many empty plates and cups from the meals I had brought since this morning. They were already piling up. This sight was nothing new to me. This is what I spent my life's work on. This is what drove me insanity. A plate mounted with Victoria sponge cake rested on his rising and falling stomach. Oh, how I wanted to rip it open. "Yes, master?" I repeated, my voice bearing the same bittersweetness as every phrase that escaped my lips directed to my mortifying master. "I don't pay you to lounge around. I have been waiting for hours," he scolded, only to choke on a strawberry that had been layered between the sponge. Bits of red fruit spewed out into the air and dirtied the satin sheets with spit and berry. I cringed at the sight, but tried to contain the look because of the presence of my judgmental master. I enjoyed watching him struggle. "I was just finishing up the washing, master." I responded simply, never giving him the gift of eye contact. "I don't care what you were doing," he snapped with a snarl. "Clean up this mess. I am lying in filth. Hurry up, woman." He turned to his side, without giving a care about the plate that slid off his bloated stomach and smudged jam onto the expensive emerald. "Clean me up too," he ordered, with his own ugly, toothy cringe, showing off grimy yellow teeth. I rolled my shoulders backwards and relaxed my joints in a desperate attempt to contain my rage. I took 3 deep breaths through clenched teeth and slowly walked over to my master, my anger increasing with every step. I piled the empty plates into stacks and balanced them on my forearms to get the task done in one go and get away from my master as soon as possible. My muscles tensed under the weight of so much weight and sent my body to lean forward uncontrollably and my face to squish into the duvet. This would be a simple, clumsy topple to anyone but myself. Due to the superiority complex my master harbored, a deathly scream was sent sounding around the master bedroom. "Paulette, how dare you assault me like this?" He shrieked like a toddler as he pulled away from my body as if I were a parasite. I gulped, my body pulsing with overwhelming fury. My breaths became hollow and uneven, my lungs aching at the lack of oxygen I provided. Sorry, I stuttered, my voice dipping from a forced sweetness to a deep sarcasm. A sore cough followed my words, and a ripple crawled up my spine like a wave of violent anxiety washing over me without placing my eyes upon it. My fingertips grazed the blade of a knife covered in grease. My eyes widened, and all of a sudden, my movements were prioritized over my thoughts. My grip tightened on the kitchen knife, the sharp blade digging into my fingers' flesh and drawing blood. The red liquid sunk into the satin and stained the fabric. But that was no problem, as lots more blood was soon to follow after. I let out a whimper as pain soared through my nerves. But I paid no matter. My only mind's focus was on the man who stared at me in confusion and growing anger. I couldn't care less about his emotions because they soon morphed into ones of pain and shock as I stabbed the tip of the knife into his belly. I pulled my hand off the blade and smeared my blood onto his naked stomach. I subconsciously let out a joyful yelp at the sight of his blood mixing with mine and creating an uncomfortable solution of growing red. I pressed my uninjured hand against the wooden handle of the knife and pushed the blade further into my master's stomach. I hastily pulled out the deadly weapon and plunged it back into his stomach. Blood splattered onto my dress, onto the bed, and onto my face. I repeated this sequence several times, the knife constantly going in and out of the body and splashing blood. With every cut, more blood seeped and deepened the stain on my usually perfectly clean apron. My face was now smeared in the metallic-smelling liquid and was dripping down my chin as if I were slurping soup, but missed my mouth. Master died after just a few stabs due to bleeding out and contagious infection. But that didn't stop my excitement. I sliced as much flesh as I could, covering as much surface area as I could, and slathering it with fresh, pungent blood. I made sure not to leave any area untouched with my bubbling rage. My lips twitched as a laugh escaped my throat, choking on itself and departing in the form of an evil cackle. I doubled down in laughter as pure ecstasy ran through my veins. I bounced on the expensive bed and headed towards the limp head of my master. I swiftly sliced the knife across my master's throat and admired the way sickly liquid swam down his wrinkled neck and ran down his chest like separating rivers. That blood quickly melded with that of his stomach and made a pool that looked like it had originated from the depths of hell itself. I twirled on the bed, never minding my steps that prodded into my master's corpse. The authorities arrived before I had taken my leave, and I was seized before I could flee. I was captured before I could even reminisce my actions. I was taken to Egan Prison and remained there till my death. 3 months, to be exact. It was not a natural death, but a chosen one, confirmed by those who didn't even know me. I let out a gasp as the walls of my cell reappeared around me, and the touch of the cold concrete floor returned to my fingertips. My eyes widened as I took sight of the clean wall in front of me. They were gone. My talons were gone. I let out a cough and a choke. Help! Help! I screamed, throwing myself at the wall and slamming a fist upon it in distress. They're gone. They're gone. Who did this? I demanded, punching the wall and watching blood draw my knuckles and splatter onto the gray. Your day has come, Hadley. You're finally free. A voice mused, their tone echoing throughout my secluded cell. What? I gaped, blinking like a confused dog. Free? Well, free from life, of course. They chuckled maliciously, taunting me with their freedom. I chose not to turn towards the guard that addressed me so rudely. My eyes continuously trained on the blank wall in front of me. I have a few more weeks. I don't want to die. I cried out, tears brimming my eyes and blurring my vision. Should have thought about that before you killed a man. The guard glared, pulling open the door of my cell and approaching me with handcuffs. I pressed my back against the wall, but there was no escaping death. I was quickly seized and yanked down the hallway, past my fellow death row inmates. I hung my head low, hair shadowing my eyes and creating an eerie effect. My breaths were loud as anxiety built up inside of me. a panic attack approaching at a tremendous speed that I wished to slow down. I stumbled over my footing several times, each one getting more clumsy and emotional. By now, tears were streaming down my cheeks and creating thin lines of cleanliness that contrasted with the dirt and grime that littered my flesh. I did nothing to stop the loud sobs that slipped through my trembling and muttering lips, weeping as dread and hysteria flowed through every pore. We soon reached a standstill where I was forced into a chair. I stared into vicious brown eyes that reflected my own teary ones. They held no sympathy or remorse, just a simple hue of cheek. I inhaled and exhaled harshly, every breath increasing in volume, mass, and sound. Leather-worn straps were tightened over my wrists and ankles, and a rusty metal brace was placed firmly at my temples. Fear soared through my veins like rockets. I pulled and struggled against my restraints that were quickly cutting off my blood flow. I let out screams for mercy, but they went unheard. Let me go, please. It's not my time. I have weeks. I can't die, I wailed, shaking my head violently in a weak attempt to get rid of the brace that held me so firmly. A loud slap sounded throughout the dimly lit room. My head was thrown to the side, and a pulsing sting was sent flaring at my right cheek. My pleads and sobs ceased. Just a quiet whimper left in its place as a final emotion of sorrow took its toll. Shut it, woman, a guard hissed. Paulette Ann Hadley, you are sentenced to death via electrocution for the murder of Sir Peter Holmes on January 16th, 1898. Do you have any last words? Another guard recited, his tone bearing no sincerity whatsoever. I took a deep breath, lifting my gaze and meeting his to dramatize my following words. A scowl was painted at my lips, and furrowed eyebrows of anger took over my features. He deserved it. I growled with nothing but rage in my voice, a pull at the lever, and a crackle of wiring. Electricity was sent pulsing through my brain and sparked an agony that tore scream after scream from my dry throat. Quickly, my mind was sent spiraling into the endless dark abyss known as death. Suicide pact. Every Friday, my parents cook the most delicious turkey that has ever existed on Earth. They use natural ingredients that I have never heard of before. Every time they make it, I ask them for the recipe. They just never tell me. Instead, they looks at me with a smile mixed with sadness and joy, and tell me that one day, when their time has come to pass, they will tell me. Tell me the secret ingredient. This is the routine that happens every week, every Friday. Little do they know that their time will be my time too. Although I know that my parents won't tell me the recipe, I give it another shot. Walk up to them, give them my best smile, take their hands, and ask. But they already know what I am going to say. They grin and shakes their heads, nodding towards my room, sending me the message to get ready for bed. I sigh and slump towards my room. I stop in front of my door. The door is decorated with pictures from my favorite band. The picture on the very left makes me smile. It's the picture of my favorite band member making a silly face. I laugh dreamily and stare into his brown eyes, but I'm not the only one laughing. Soon enough, my older brother Luke is pounding me on the back and laughing. Not really a nice laugh either. "Lola, you've got to stop this," he chokes out. "Stop what?" I demand, my brows furrowed. "Stop joking around with your pictures. It's too funny to handle." I raise my eyebrows high and stare at him, long and hard. Finally, I shoot him a glare and step into my room. I don't forget to slam the door right into his laughing face. See, this is the reason I need to get away from my family. My brother. He is so annoying. You wish that you weren't born. And I don't. Yes, I am killing myself because of my brother. It was either this or run away. But if you run away, you just get kidnapped and killed anyway. So what's the difference? Once safely in my room, and my brother gone, I sneak into my closet and pull out the small but strong bulletin board that I got from my grandmother on my birthday. I forgot to check yesterday's square on the calendar, so I will do it with today's. I take the white chalk I have been using the past month out of the box that it was in and slash 2 white lines next to the others. When done, I carefully put everything back in my closet and lie on my bed. Breathing slowly, I run down the suicide plan in my mind. When I come back to my room from brushing my teeth, something in the room is different. The lights are off. Did Mom come in here? Dad couldn't, because he's in Miami for work. Oh no. What if my brother came in here? I try to shrug it off and crawl under my covers. The whooshing of the wind outside quickly drowns me in my sleep, and all my thoughts are lost. The next morning, I get up late. I quickly eat breakfast and get ready for school. I arrive at school on time, but I'm still worried about the lights turned off yesterday. Someone must have went into my room, did something, and forgotten that the lights had already been on when they went in. My worried look must be severe, because Angie, my best friend, asks me if I am all right at lunch. "Oh, I'm fine, I reply. Her head is cocked to the side, and she studies me closely. I try to give her a brief smile and shrug it off. This is a good idea, because Angie knows that my shrugs are all truthful and intentional. I feel so bad, though, for betraying and lying to my friend, even though she can help me get out of this mess. I remind myself that some things are meant to be dealt with alone and individually, but I still feel bad. So before the lunch bell rings, I ask her if she wants to come over, and her face lightens. She tells me, of course. When school ends, we meet up at our usual spot near the gate and start to walk towards my house. We talk about the usual things: hallway gossip, grades, and boys. When we get to my house, we watch a movie and make slime, which fortunately takes my mind off things. Before Angie leaves, she hugs me tight and whispers into my ear that she knows something is wrong and that she can help me anytime with it. She tells me that I am never alone. If only that were true. Even after our time together, Angie and I only used up 3 hours of our time. I still have 1 hour left to chill. I get bored, so I decide to slash today's mark earlier than usual and head into my closet. When I pull out the bulletin board, though, all the tally marks are gone. I'm so shocked that I gasp out loud. What? What? I stutter. I was not going to let this go. If someone had done this, only my brother could. My mother wouldn't do such an evil thing. But if my brother had read the notebook, then he would know that he was being such a pain. I wait until he comes home from work and confront him. It did not work as well as I thought, though. He convinces me that I can't kill myself because of one person, that I need more bad things in my life to hate myself enough and kill myself. We sort it out, and he swears to not be much of a pain anymore. I guess some things are meant to be dealt with by talking and not action. I have learned my lesson. Revenge is best served from the dead. My name is Danny Donahue, and I am not your ordinary 14-year-old boy from Southern California. Well, I guess I may be ordinary, except for one teeny thing, but I guess that's normal. Nobody is just ordinary. Heck, what does ordinary even mean? I guess I will never know. Because I am not your ordinary boy. I am Danny Donahue, the boy who helps ghosts cross into their next life. Movies weren't wrong. There are ghosts on Earth, and sometimes they might get stuck on Earth because they have unfinished business with someone or themselves. They can't even get peace after they die. I thought, when we die, we are finally at peace. I guess, sadly not. Most of the time, it's something simple, like apologizing to someone, or something similar to that. But other times, it was hard. It wasn't because a task was too hard or complicated. No, it was because the ghosts themselves didn't even know what they had left to do. And that is something frustrating. I know what you may be thinking. What do his parents think? Probably think he belongs in the lunny bin. If you thought that, you thought wrong. His parents, Estelle and Venerable Donahue, possessed the same abilities their son had, But this story is my weirdest adventure yet. I still wonder if it actually even happened. It's kind of crazy, and Danny doesn't want to brag or anything, but he was quite awesome, if he had to say. This story started when my family and I had moved from Southern California to New York City. We only had moved here because this was the city populated with wandering souls, which just meant more stress on me. My social life was non-existent. My parents had homeschooled me since 2nd grade, when I began helping them out. But this unbelievable, well, me saying ghosts are real is already quite unbelievable. Story started when I moved into my family's new apartment in the busy part of New York. When my parents weren't super cool ghost helpers, they were journalists. And might I add, mighty fine when they did their work. But that meant they barely had time to spend with me. I had opened the bright red door to the quite large apartment, opening my arms and breathing the new place in. I was quite excited to be living here. I never had been to New York before, and it seemed magical. When I had walked into my plain, empty room, I spotted a ghost. Great, can't even sleep one night without someone barging in. Danny grumbled to himself. I didn't think the ghost boy saw me. Who wouldn't? I am pretty handsome, Danny thought, running a hand through his thick black hair. I don't think the dead boy had seen me. And if he hadn't acknowledged me yet. Then the ghost boy had walked over to me from fiddling the sustains and slammed the door behind me. I just realized that the ghost thought I couldn't see him. After I realized that I went over to the formerly alive boy and said, "Hi." Never thought I would have spooked a ghost, but I guess I did, because it looked like the ghost seemed startled. You can see me. The tall ghost pointed up and down to himself, unsure. Since I'm talking to you, I'm pretty sure I can, I said, as it was obvious. Sorry. I'm really dead. The best scenario would be that I was dreaming, but I'm not, right? The ghost mumbled on. No, you are sadly dead, and I'm alive, and I can see you, but other people can't. Well, most people can't. By the way, my name is Danny, he stated while putting down boxes of his random junk on the floor. Well, nice to meet you, Danny. My name is Nicholas. The ghost, Nicholas smiled at him. Danny, come here. We need your help. Danny's dad hollered from outside the apartment. I was sure the whole floor could hear him. Sure thing. Wait, hold on. You and your parents are going to be living here? Nicholas questioned. And can they see me? Or are you like some chosen one thing? Yes, and yes. My parents can see ghosts too. And our job is to help you move on. Danny said, opening the door and walking over to help his parents. But Nicholas had stayed in the same spot, not wanting to talk to Danny's parents. After all, he hadn't had any interaction with a living or a dead person in 2 years. He had gotten used to staying in the shadows and just listening to other people talk. I had come back with another enormous and heavy box and dropped it on the floor, making a loud whump sound. "So, Nicholas," Danny said, testing his name on how it felt in his mouth. "Why are you still here?" "I don't know." Nicholas shrugged. "Then think of something stopping you from resting in peace." Then I walked back out of my room to grab more boxes. I had told my parents I had to set up my room and didn't want them to see it. Only after I finished, so I would have an excuse to stay in my room. And plus, Nicholas didn't want to see my parents for some reason. Nicholas and I talked in hush whispers for hours that day, but he still couldn't think of any reason why he would still be a ghost. But a ghost, technically, is a person who is only partially dead. But he could think of anything. I had, though, learned that Nicholas was 47, but he had died 2 years ago in a drowning accident. I had urged him to tell me the reason for how he drowned, but he didn't say. Until an hour of my excellent persuasion, he told me that he couldn't swim and died before anyone got to him. I always knew I had good convincing skills. A couple of days passed, and still nothing. Danny just wanted to bring Nicholas to his parents, but Nicholas always refused. Ugh, if I went up to him, they would have probably figured out the reason for his reason to stay with the living. "Okay, Danny, I think I might know why I am not really dead yet," Nicholas huffed out. He seemed slightly embarrassed, but more so angry. "Finally! Been waiting for this for a while," Danny said, stretching back on his chair, taking a break from an easy he had to complete by 2 hours. "Okay, so I lied. I didn't die by drowning, just to let you know I can swim. But I was drowned by my kids exactly 2 years ago. And I think the forgive and forget part hasn't exactly worked. And I think I might want revenge on those brats," Nicholas said in a hushed voice, not sure if he really trusted Danny. But if Danny said that he could help him, he might finally get avenged for his death. My eyes literally felt like they might come out of my eye sockets. "Hold on, buddy. Just what?" Danny said, shock clearly visible on his face. "The ghost I always helped had simple tasks, and maybe once in a blue moon it might be a little interesting. But this was just out of this world crazy. No more like out of the universe. So basically, you're telling me that you were some rich dude with spoiled brats for kids, and then when you were about to die, you decided to change your will so that your sister gets most of it?" Danny asked, still thinking this was a really small reason to kill your dad, even if he was a billionaire and didn't even give you 1% of it. "Yes, but you see, before I could change the will, they somehow found out about me changing it. So they killed me, so they would get over 80% of my money and estate. What happened to your wife? Danny wondered. She died a year before me, Nicholas said, with a sad smile, probably remembering his wife. So what do you want to do? I'm assuming you want payback, Danny said, raising an eyebrow. Yes, and I have been planning it for 2 years, so it's basically foolproof, Nicholas said with a smile. Family drama. Danny chuckled a little while thinking this. Then, that day, Nicholas told me what he had in mind, and I am not going to lie. It was quite clever. I guess when you have 2 years to think of a plan, and not any plan, a plan to get revenge on your killers, you would want to perfect it. Nicholas had been living in Danny's room for almost a year, and since Nicholas started living in this apartment, he always scared future tenants. Except for the Donahues, because they could see him. The strange thing was my parents still hadn't spotted Nicholas yet. Strange indeed. Nicholas had been living in this apartment specifically because it was right next to, you would never guess who, his kids' apartments. Every time he saw them, he felt sadness for what he let them become. But then the sadness turned into anger, and his blood started boiling whenever he looked at them for what he did to him. The next day, we started putting Nicholas's plan into action. But for one part of it, I had to borrow something from my parents without raising suspicion. I had to borrow a special drink that if a ghost drank it, they would be invisible, but be able to touch not too heavy stuff. I thought talking the elixir would be difficult, but it proved to be easy, since my mom was out meeting some new friends she had made, and my dad had gone grocery shopping. So I took the elixir with ease. After he got it, he gave it to Nicholas, and Nicholas slurped the dark bluish liquid down with one gulp. Slow down, Nicky. You don't want to get a stomach ache, Danny teased. First off, don't call me Nicky, and second, I am too excited. Nicholas seemed exhilarated. After the Donahues' concoction started settling in Nicholas's body, they tested it out to see if it really worked. They even tried the classical ghost picking up book thing, and behold, it worked. Almost as if Nicholas were alive. After that, Nicholas was extremely giddy and excited to get his plan in motion. After what seemed like half an hour, I finally thought we had enough of the plague, and now we had to get the work done. Nicholas had passed through and walked into his daughter, Stella's apartment. It had the same layout of which the Donahues' flat was, but theirs was more on the old side, whereas Stella's place was more modern and high-tech. Danny just had Nicholas go into the apartment and find the key to the front door and slide it over to Danny. Yes, the floor cracks were quite large. Don't worry, she comes back in an hour. So that gives us an hour to play golf, Nicholas said with a smirk, grabbing a baseball bat and ruining all the expensive furniture and decor in the house. I don't mind. I think that this should be all yours. You deserve this, Danny said with a dramatic bow, pretending Nicholas was royalty. He practically was. He was a billionaire. Why, thank you, Nicholas said with amusement, after an hour of playing golf. They had successfully destroyed everything. Then the door opened, and you could hear screaming. But in my opinion, it sounded like a cat being hit by a car. Oh my God! Oh my God! Not that painting! Not that painting! That cost too much to end up like this, said Stella, running around, looking through her apartment. Nicola watched with enjoyment as his daughter was running around checking her possessions that she had bought with his money. After all, it was his money, so it was his stuff too. Hello, Stella. I hoped you learned a lesson about why you shouldn't kill people, especially not family. Nicholas boomed from standing beside the TV, and then she shattered the expensive screen. What are you doing? Who are you? I'm calling with the cops. Get out of my place, Stella yelled back, visibly frightened, trying to sink into a wall and grabbing a hold of a knife. My dear, you don't need to do that. I got a deal to make. Nicholas clearly enjoyed this. I mean, Stella is a murder, so this should be okay. What do you want? Stella stuttered, but tried keeping her head high. I want you to donate all the money you got from your father's will. Why is this your concern? Stella sneered back, still nervous. Don't you cut me off again, Nicholas shouted. The second thing you must do, or I will follow you and haunt you, even in your sleep. So don't you dare disobey me. The second thing you must do is that you and your brother, Jeremy, will have to go to the police station and tell them you committed the murder of Nicholas DeRosa. Understood me? Nicholas seethed out. Stella just grunted and walked out the door, slamming it shut before she left her apartment. Then, Nicholas walked out of the bathroom, where I was hiding behind a shower. I know it's not the best place, but still, you did good, Nicholas. Danny smiled at him, and Nicholas beamed out a smile so bright it would make the sun look like a little flame compared to Nicholas. Nicholas and Danny did the same stuff to Nicholas's son, Jeremy DeRosa. Nicholas and Danny had to repeat this routine for 2 weeks before Jeremy donated his part of the will and went to hand himself in to the police, which meant Stella only had little time left before Jeremy told the police what happened. After a week more of Nicholas's and Danny's torture, Stella couldn't take it anymore. She went to donate her money and hand herself in with a miserable face. She only handed herself in because Nicholas had haunted her so bad that she couldn't even close her eyes to sleep. And she looked and acted like a zombie. After 8 months, I guess that's it, Danny said to Nicholas, who was about to go to the life after death. I guess it is, little buddy. Thanks again. I never thought Jeremy and Stella would be put into prison, but I guess they get their karma. Nicholas thanked Danny. Jeremy and Stella had a trial, and this time, Nichols made sure they didn't just pay the money and not get charged with anything. After 8 months of watching court fights happen, both of the DeRosa kids, well, they aren't really kids, got sent to prison. Goodbye, Danny. Thank you so much. Hope you have a happy ending to your life, Nichols said, as he vanished away into thin air, into the afterlife. You may think the story ends here, but you're very wrong. The DeRosa kids had mysteriously died in prison, and they realized that Danny was helping their father scare them. So now the DeRosa kids were after me, and I am now basically a runaway, that I am even on national television. So proud of myself. Stella and Jeremy are coming to kill me for messing up their lives, and I am so going to end up dead meat. Muddled murder. The first thing I saw when I woke up was the blood. My mind went into a full panic mode, and I flipped out. I started checking all over myself to see where I had been injured, my bloody hands smearing the blood all over my clothes. Then I realized I wasn't injured, which could only mean one thing. It was someone else's blood, but whose? I had no idea. In fact, I had no idea where I was. All I could see around me was a dark, narrow street. I was standing on the sidewalk, quite far away from the nearest streetlight. Above me was the clear night sky. A handful of stars shone down upon me, and I felt that they were supposed to give me some comfort, but my heart rate refused to slow down. And then I saw it. There was a body on the curb, barely 10 meters away from me. My natural instinct was to go and check on the person, but something stopped me. I wondered what, but my memory refused to provide me with anything in my past. I tiptoed closer, not another soul in the alley, as I went and checked. I was still a couple of meters away from the man when I realized he wasn't breathing. There was a pool of blood spreading from his torso and onto the sidewalk. The man was dead, and I had blood on my hands. I didn't need any memory to add up the two. A car's headlights suddenly flashed to life in front of me, and the engine revved on. It reversed a bit, and then sped past me, barely giving me enough time to register the man sitting inside. From the small pharmacy in front of me, a short, bearded man came out and started pulling down the shutter. I did the first thing that came to my mind. I ran. I had no idea how long I had run for, but I am sure it was a pretty long time because my t-shirt was completely soaked in sweat by the time I stopped, and it was an early winter evening. I realized I was on a bridge, a few cars going by, couples walking, holding hands, families with little children. I wondered who my parents were, if I was married, or had a romantic lover. If I only had my memories back, my life. But the sight of my hand snapped me right out of those thoughts. It didn't matter, because nobody would want to be related to a murderer. I didn't know if someone else had killed him, or if it had been me. But suddenly, it occurred to me that it would be better if I didn't know. If I did remember my past, what if I realized that I had murdered him? Not only him, but maybe others too. Just that thought made me doubt myself, and wanting my memories back seemed like a dangerous option. I descended the bridge to reach the turbid river flowing past me, and thankfully washed up my bright red hands in the water. My hands were numb by the time I stood up to return to the upper roads. That was when I heard something. "Oh, it was easy as cake," a man said. "Are you sure no one was there?" asked a woman. "I think I saw a girl, and she saw me." I panicked and drove forward, but the car hit her head, and she collapsed to the ground. I didn't know what to do, and I stopped to check, but she was stirring up, so I raced away, the man replied. It was coming from the other side of the bridge, beyond the wall separating the riverbank for the construction of the bridge. I tiptoed over to it and peeked out to see who was talking. Smoke blew out from a man's dark lips as he put a cigarette into his mouth again, leaning on the wall. The woman was standing across from him, arms crossed, in oversized, baggy clothes. She had a beanie on her head and wore huge, funky glasses. She was facing me, but I was well hidden in the dark. They continued talking, not caring to keep their voices down. "You dolt? The body is still there?" the woman asked. "Abandoned on the sidewalk. Shouldn't be noticed by anyone till tomorrow morning. By then, we'll be long gone." The man was nonchalant. The woman nodded, a bit anxious, while he smoked for a minute more. Then they both started climbing up the riverbank. I followed them after some time, composing my thoughts and struggling to remember something. I thought I must have waited for a minute or two, but I somehow still saw the car leaving with the two people in it, and the slate of my memory, which had been wiped clean, managed to store the number in it. Police sirens made their way to my ears, and I was a bit surprised. My blank mind recognized it. Had I heard them many times before? Was I actually a criminal? What was my past? I somehow didn't want to find out. I just stood frozen there, above the riverbank, in the headlights of the police cars, as they advanced towards me. I was literally unable to move, dead tired and fatigued. "Hands up in the air," came a voice over the loudspeaker. My addled mind did as I was told. The next few minutes were a blur as the cops came out, handcuffed me, charged me for the murder of a famous entrepreneur, and took me to the police station for questioning. Somewhere along the way, I fell unconscious. "Did you kill Mr. Pop?" I knew that was the name the entrepreneur was known by, but it sounded funny. I bit back a chuckle. I don't know, I answered, just like I had the 3 last times. I have all night, the officer told me. Keep sitting then. I hope your butt doesn't hurt. I almost smirked. He glared daggers at me, and then stood up and left the room. A few minutes later, another officer entered. A plump, middle-aged woman. Answer honestly. Did you kill Mr. Pop? I have been telling you honestly. I have no idea whether I did or I didn't. I just woke up with no memory of where I was or who I was. I yelled at her. Yelled. She nodded in sympathy. Quite common in criminals. I was too tired to correct her, but I was exasperated. Why couldn't they just understand I was telling the truth? Nothing in my head tells me that I killed that man. So I don't know, I declared. There is quite some evidence, you know. The blood on your clothes matches with his. I looked down at the red spots and smears on my clothes and winced. And a shop owner in the alley says that he saw a girl with a description like yours run away from the dead body. Same orange t-shirt, same long braid, and same camo pants. Now tell me, what am I supposed to believe? She raised an eyebrow. I really don't know, I said. The description was me all right, and I had run away. But had I killed the man? Unsure guilt surged through my veins, and the officer noticed the beads of sweat on my forehead. If I was the murderer, I was just making their jobs harder. But then I didn't want to find out. Unsure guilt was stressful enough, and I didn't know how I could live with the knowledge that I had killed a human being in cold blood. Are you sure you don't want to confess anything? She asked with a tone of finality in her sweet voice. I would confess if I remembered anything, I replied. Then I suddenly remembered something. Wait, what's wrong? The lady officer leaned forward, eyebrows knitted together. I saw that car leave the bridge tonight. The 2 people in it, they were talking about something suspicious, I said, racking my brain for the words. The man raised an eyebrow. What? I'm not sure. They were saying that they left a body on the sidewalk. A girl had seen it. They hit her head and run away. They were planning to escape tonight. I narrated the incident. How does that make a difference? It does, I said, as I saw my spark of hope being snatched away with it. You should check. I remember the car number. You know the number plate, huh? The 2 police officers had tracked the number plate to a road by the river, where a car had been abandoned. Go home, the woman told me. I don't know where I live. Then wait here. We're going alone. I scowled as I followed them out of the police station, and their car revved away. Then I saw a cab passing me and jumped in. Follow that car! We followed the car for 25 minutes until we reached a road running parallel to the river. The police car had stopped behind the car I had seen before. and I told the cab driver to park behind it and jumped off. I rushed to the shore where I could see the river and a small boathouse in the distance. The river was wide at that point, the current slow. To my left were the mountains into which the river bent, and my right were the police officers near the boathouse about half a kilometer away. I saw the man and woman I had seen earlier, along with a dark guy in shoes, pull out a rusty old motorboat and push it into the water and jump on. "Put your hands in the air. You cannot escape tonight." The officers pointed their gun at them. In their surprise, someone suddenly activated the turbines, and they sped ahead into the river, moving towards my side. The motorboat was slow. The turbines were sputtering and malfunctioning as the boat raced away, forearmed the routing and chasing officers. I don't know what I was thinking, but I barely hesitated a second before jumping into the river to my left. They were speeding towards my side, cutting through the middle of the river. I was perpendicularly closer, and I knew I could reach the center before they did. I swam in smooth, rapid strokes, cutting through the water like a literal fish as I aimed towards the center where they would reach in about 10 seconds. I think they were too preoccupied keeping their eyes on the officers because they certainly didn't see me coming. The cold water didn't faze me. It was like it was part of my blood. Of course, the adrenaline counteracted it, and I had no trouble speeding through the limpid surface. As expected, I reached 1 second before their boat. As it zoomed past me, I somehow managed to grab hold of the end. I clambered on, somehow still unnoticed by the 3 people, while the officers stared at me, flabbergasted. They were too scared to shoot, let it hurt me, so it all depended on me. I crept forward and elbowed the cigarette man in the neck sharply that he fell to the ground immediately, somehow unconscious. The woman turned to me, ready to battle in her large hanging clothes. I ducked to avoid her punch, grabbed her arm, and twisted it behind her back. Then I kicked her off the boat as it continued speeding away. The last man was the one with the shades, driving the boat. He stepped out of the seat while the boat continued towards the hills and turned to face me. Even though I couldn't see his eyes, a chill ran down my spine, and he attacked. I think my brain was a little slow to process as his kick swept me off my feet and knocked the air out of my lungs. Panting, I pushed at the floor to get up, while he grabbed my hair and pushed my head towards the whirring motors of the boat. He pressurized me into the blades while I used all my physical strength to hold my head up. He pushed once, twice, and the 3rd time, I finally got a grip with one hand to ram the other into his sternum. As he doubled back, I realized that the boat was heading straight for a wall of soil and bushes. A hill was straight ahead, I rushed towards the wheel, but before I could rush it, the man got up and tugged me back. I wrestled with him, watching the imminent crash drifting closer. He kicked my thigh, and I launched a punch at his shoulder, ran again for the wheel. Grabbing the cool metal, I yanked it to the right, just as the boat curved around the edge of the hill, and barely avoided the collision. The man with shades had managed to stand up at the end of the boat, but my sudden turn threw him off balance, and he splashed into the water. I steered the boat towards the shore as I saw the other two criminals climbing out and being ambushed by the police officers. I finally parked along the bank and stepped out, my mind in a whirl, even more muddled than before. The two officers emerged, dragging along the two criminals. The woman went onto the boat and brought the third guy, then came back, and both of them patted my back. But I wasn't paying attention. My mind was elsewhere. How did I know how to do all that? How did I swim so well, or fight so brutally? The worst thought crept into my head. I could be a trained assassin or mercenary. I was too much of an expert, and I had been pretty close to the dead man. I was scared that I had led the police on a wild goose chase. I must be the real criminal. I must have killed Mr. Pop. I didn't want to find out. When I voiced my concerns, the police officers waved them away, too busy congratulating me. But my head refused to believe them, fearful of what my past could hold. Hey, do you remember me? A man rushed into the hospital ward, worry lines creasing over his forehead. Two people who claimed to be my parents were standing on one side of my bed, explaining to me that he was my brother. I'm sorry, but no, I said, and he looked like he was about to burst into tears. My parents leaned over and hugged him as they also squeezed my hands. I saw the two police officers appear from the door. They had huge grins on their faces. All three of them confessed to the murder, and we also found them guilty of a couple more. They have been duly imprisoned. Great work, kid, the man said. And on top of that, it was announced a couple of hours ago that you are going to be awarded a bravery medal for your courage. The woman was about to jump up and down. I found it difficult to smile. But how was I able to defeat them so easily? How could I fight so well, swim so smoothly? Are you sure I'm not a danger to society? My brow was furrowed. No, not at all. The man who was supposed to be my father guffawed and slapped my thigh. Don't worry. I'll tell you a bit about yourself. You are 26, won 7 medals for swimming in high school, and now teach martial arts at a renowned academy. Murder at X-Ircon, the extreme ironing convention, was infamous in Preston. For the last 8 years, extreme ironers from around the world fell upon the city. Their antics in the streets caused emergency calls for days. Ironing on top of city buses. Ironing while hang gliding over downtown. Ironing while belaying down the cupola of City Hall. Every year, there was one incident that truly left its mark on Preston. This year, the incident would be the death of Sean Morrison. I looked down at Sean's body, his face brutalized by a blunt object. In any other situation, identifying the murder weapon might have been tricky. But not here. Not at XIR Con. There was no mistaking the iron-shaped dent in the dead man's head. I had seen it before. I clenched my fists, remembering the day that my wife had been murdered 8 years ago. The image of her face haunted my nightmares. Beautiful until it had been ruined by a Bosch TDA 2650 G-Bide quick fill, the highest rated iron of 2012. Preston's coroner had estimated the time of death at about 2:15 a.m. The murder weapon had not been found yet, and the trail of blood leading out of Sean's hotel suite had run cold quickly. No witnesses had come forward. The extreme ironing community was notoriously tight-knit and likely to protect their own. They had done so in the past. Detective Clay, they're ready. A police officer on scene had separated the suspects, and she handed me a list of names. I squared my shoulders and got started with the interview process. Anna Kruger, the hotel manager, was already in Sean's suite, pacing around and surveying the extensive damage. Pieces of drywall and broken glass littered the carpet, and the telltale burn marks of overly hot irons defaced the furniture and carpet. I watched her until she stopped mid-pace near the end table next to the couch and knelt down. Anna stuck her arm in a hole in the wall and pulled out a Panasonic A66K automatic iron. I never would have allowed these extreme ironing United States assholes to have XIR Con here again if I weren't so hard up for money. At least they rented out the entire place. Anna glared at the iron-shaped hole in the drywall. They always ruin something. They leave burns and run up the electric bills, plugging in all their stupid irons. She raised her eyes to meet mine and brandished the iron. But this time, Sean went too far. When was the last time you saw him, Miss Kruger? He came down last night, around 11, asking for more towels. She pointed at a pile of charred towels near the couch. I can see why he asked. Anna held out the Panasonic iron, her hand shaking. The temperature gauge is on the highest setting. He was burning things on purpose. If he were still alive, I'd sue him into oblivion. Miss Kruger, do check with that ironing board vendor, detective. I had to chase him out of the storage room around 2:30 this morning. Mighty suspicious, if you ask me. Errol Fleming. the owner of the Cleveland Ironing Board Company, leaned against the wall in his room. "That damned Sean," he growled, German accent thick on his tongue. "He ruined me. He posted negative reviews of my new ironing board design and used his extreme ironing championship fame and influence to boost them." "Go on," the Cleveland steamer. It was a board made specifically for steam irons. Sean was a proponent of steam irons, but he said my board had a shitty design. His was the #1 review on Amazon. Everyone saw it. My profits tanked. No one bought. I am glad he is gone. I'm sure his negative reviews were the only reason no one bought the board. Errol's eyes widened, and he straightened his back. "I am not happy he is dead. That is a terrible thing to say. I am innocent, of course. Mr. Fleming, can you tell me what you were doing in the storage closet last night?" Color rose to his cheeks. "I cannot say. It would ruin me." "I thought your business was already ruined by Mr. Morrison." "Yes, my beautiful Cleveland steamer. But I had other boards in development." "What does this have to do with your excursion?" Errol sucked in a breath and held it until I thought he might faint. Finally, he breathed out and answered. "I was looking at the hotel's ironing boards." I frowned. "I couldn't come up with any good ideas," he wailed. "I was looking for inspiration. You can't tell anyone that I'm an ironing board design fraud." Errol slumped back against the wall. "God verdammt," he whispered. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Fleming. Please, wait. You should talk to the tall man with curly hair. I saw him sneaking out of Sean's room last night, after 2. Thomas Prince. The tall man with curly hair was Thomas Prince, a longtime advocate for the use of steam irons over dry irons in the extreme ironing competition world. Thomas was a prolific donor to Kickstarter campaigns for new steam iron technology, and he wielded a Rowenta DW52700 1 Focus Excel steam iron during competitions. He looked up from the hotel bed when I walked in, eyes red and puffy. "Detective, I hear you were out late." "Yeah, I went to see Sean." "Any particular reason?" "We're friends." Thomas frowned and corrected himself. "Were friends, Mr. Prince. Your visit makes you the last person to see Sean alive. That doesn't mean anything. Have you talked to Noah yet? He was going to drop some major news on us tonight, and Sean got wind of it yesterday. He was so upset." "What news?" "Sean wanted to take over EOS. He thought Noah was doing a shit job, and he's never been shy about voicing his opinion. Noah threatened him, so Sean took a swing, caught him right in the jaw. Good thing he has a weak punch." "Go on." Thomas leaned back. Not much else to say. I went to Sean's room to talk him down after that. He was pretty shaken up and talking about leaving EUs completely. Noah had really gotten him riled up. I appreciate the information. In the meantime, I would like you to stay right here. Thomas shot me an annoyed look. Am I still a suspect? You were seen leaving Sean's room last night, and his body was found this morning. I'd say you're the primary suspect. I called for additional officers to watch Thomas's room while one officer remained inside, Noah Bowers. I approached the sullen president of Extreme Ironing United States, Noah Bowers, in the hotel's business center. He looked up from his seat at a small conference table. Before I could say anything, Noah spoke. You think I did it, don't you? I didn't say that. But you know I threatened him, right? Well, he threatened me first. I didn't want him to, think I was intimidated. Noah stood up and spun one of the chairs. Look, bro, Sean was a dick, okay? That's no secret. So he wanted to oust me and, take over as president of the EIUS. That doesn't mean I killed him. I said nothing. Noah grunted and crossed his arms. If you really want to know who did it, you should talk to his fiancée, Meryl, bro. She was gonna, poison him or something. Marin knocked. I visited Marin in her hotel room. She was sitting calmly in the hotel bed, watching a reality show. And she didn't bother to look up as I entered the room. I understand you found Sean this morning, Ms. Knox. Sure did. I went in to make sure he was up in time for the convention. He liked to sleep in. You had access to his room? She stared at me. Duh. We were engaged. You don't seem upset that your fiancé was murdered. Marin shrugged. I'm not. He was an abusive, cheating piece of shit. And I was going to end things tonight. But now I have to thank someone for saving me the trouble. I understand you were planning to poison Sean. Marin cocked a thin brow. Why would I poison him when I could leave him? That's why I got my own room in the first place. I was thinking of putting eye drops in his food so he'd shit his guts out. So yeah, maybe that's technically poisoning him. But he wouldn't have died or anything. It's still an actionable offense, Ms. Knox. Whatever. Like I said, I didn't do it. She paused and thought. You should talk to Eddie. I saw him arguing with Sean yesterday. It looked pretty heated, but I didn't stick around to listen. Probably something to do with steam versus dry irons again. Eddie's crazy for dry irons. Eddie Wu was doodling on hotel stationery. But he put the pen down as I walked into his room. I understand you and Mr. Morrison exchanged words yesterday. We have the same argument every time we see each other, Eddie said, sitting up a little straighter. He's always going on about steam iron superiority, but he fails to see the beauty and simplicity of a classic dry iron. When did you last see Mr. Morrison? Eddie continued, as though I hadn't spoken. Using a dry iron is an art form. He walked across the room towards an ornate case. Let me show you. That's okay, my iron, he cried out in panic. Eddie showed me the empty case. Where is it? How? Eddie sank to his knees, tears spilling from his eyes. My glorious iron. I can't believe it's gone. Mr. Wu, I don't care about your needs, detective. What about mine? My iron is missing. The perfect soul plate. unblemished by steam holes, polished to a high shine. Did you know I had a custom handle built to fit my hand perfectly? My heart skipped a beat, and an image of my wife thrust itself into my head. The iron mark on her face wasn't perfectly smooth. There were spots, steam holes, but Sean's mark had no holes. He was killed with a dry iron. "Mr. Wu?" I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "Who else here is a dry iron aficionado? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me." Eddie grinned like the Cheshire Cat. "Sean Morrison. Did anyone else know?" Eddie shrugged. "This is a small world, detective. It's hard to hide something so scandalous." His grin faded. "You should talk to Thomas." "Thomas Prince." Thomas jerked up in surprise as I walked in the door. He set aside the iron he was cradling and wiped a tear from his eye. "Mr. Prince, how well do you know the others at this convention?" "Well, me and Sean go way back, of course. Eddie's been around for a while. We don't agree on irons, but he's a nice guy. Marin came into the mix a couple years ago. Noah's been the president of EIUS for a long time, but he mostly keeps to himself. I don't know him that well. Do you know if anyone might have a motive to harm Mr. Morrison?" Marin and Sean have been together for a long time, but that's been falling apart. Thomas made a face. "She's a real piece of work. I wouldn't trust her with my iron under any circumstances, but I don't really know the others well enough to say." I took a deep breath. "Did you know that Sean was secretly into dry irons?" Thomas winced. "I went to visit him after he argued with Noah. He was really stressed out. I don't think he meant to tell me, but he slipped up. He told me about his preference for dry irons." "Go on." "I was shocked, you know. We had spent years talking about the merits of steam irons over dry." Thomas threw his hands in the air. "I mean, you can use a steam iron as a dry iron." But he just kept talking about how cool Eddie's iron was. Thomas stood and walked to the window. I asked him if I could have his championship-winning steam iron. And I know it was kind of selfish to even ask, but it's a steam iron. He faced me, his mouth hard. If he was so into dry irons, there's no reason he needed to keep that one. I knew the answer already. He said no. Thomas hung his head. Yeah, that's when I noticed it. A plug barely poked out from under the hotel's dresser. Thomas noted my pause and followed my gaze. We lunged at the same time, but I reached the dresser first, knelt, and yanked the cord, and there it was. The Oster Heavyweight GCSTD 1119 Classic, stained with what was surely the victim's blood. Eddie Wu's missing iron. I expected to fight my way out of the situation, but Thomas sat down heavily and exhaled. I didn't mean to kill him. I backed away from Thomas to the room door. Sean had Eddie's iron in his room. He was messing with it. I think he was trying to break it, so Eddie wouldn't win in today's competition. Thomas groaned. And that was bad enough. If the sponsors found out, we'd lose all those investments. But when he refused to give me his steam iron, I just snapped. I stuck my head out the door and motioned for the nearest officer to assist me. Before I could even think about what I was doing, Sean was on the floor, and I was holding Eddie's iron. I brought it back here to hide it, but you see how much good that did me. Thomas looked down at his hands. I'll never iron again. The officer casually entered the room. I won't resist, he said, looking straight at me. I messed up. Mr. Prince, please remain still, the officer said gently as she bent down and handcuffed Thomas's hands behind his back. The officer led Thomas away, but the satisfaction of solving the case rang hollow in my heart. I returned to other suspects to tell them they were free to go. When I got to Marin's room, she simply nodded and started packing her things. But there was something I had to know. Did you know your boyfriend was a dry iron promoter? Marin's eyes widened. Sean's been advocating the benefits of steam irons, both in competition and in the home, for years. The slight tremble in her voice gave her away. She was hiding something. What aren't you telling me, Ms. Knox? She stared at the floor and bit her lip. Look, he'd always use a steam iron for shows and competitions because that's what people expected. He had a sponsor to please, a wealthy one, but behind closed doors, Marin took a deep, shuddering breath. Behind closed doors, we used a dry iron. She buried her face in her hands. Oh God, you can't tell anyone. His reputation would be destroyed. The sponsor would pull all their funding out of the projects he and Thomas were working on. Like what? They had an idea to improve this older model steam iron, right? To make it more efficient and easier to clean. The steam holes on that model were tough to clean, but it was otherwise a great iron. I would even use it sometimes when he wasn't at home. I liked it better than his dry iron. She laughed sadly. He would have been so mad. Marin stood up and started to pace. Anyway, he never got a new steam iron, so he always used the same one. His championship iron. It was iconic, blue and white. Have you ever seen it? Something in her voice made me uneasy. Let me show you, Marin continued. It's beautiful, Xavier. How do you know my name? She opened a decorative case near the foot of the hotel bed and pulled out an iron. My blood ran cold. It was a Bosch TDA 2650 G quick fill. Marin smirked at my expression. You recognize it, don't you? Or rather, you recognize the shape of the sole plate. It was the same one that killed your wife 8 years ago. She stepped closer, her grin widening. He did it, you know? Sean killed her. She found out his secret obsession with dry irons. and he couldn't allow her to talk. I inched my hand towards my concealed pistol. Put the Bosch down, Marin. You don't have to do this. Marin raised the iron, her pupils dilated with madness. But I've always wanted to know what it felt like, what it could feel like to kill someone. She swung the iron towards my head, barely missing. I called for backup and pulled out my pistol to defend myself. I don't want to shoot you. 2 police officers swept into the room before I had to take any further actions. Marin was quickly disarmed and handcuffed. She glared at me as the officers pulled her from the room. But she said nothing further. My heart ached with memories of my wife. Whether he knew it or not, Thomas had given her a little bit of justice. But that didn't excuse his actions. He would be behind bars for a long time. Marin would serve time for being an accessory to murder, for covering up Sean's crimes. I would have preferred to see Sean stand trial, to look into his face with satisfaction as the bailiffs hauled him away. I would have to content myself knowing the truth of my wife's murder had finally been ironed out.